Hello. Hey, I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I hope you got some good information out of that. And as we get ready to get into our panel, I did want to thank our sponsoring organizations. Of course, Decoding Dyslexia Georgia, Cobb County Commission District 2, our commissioners back there, Jerica Richardson. Reading is essential for all people, otherwise known as REAP. The SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, Cox Campus, the Rollins Center for Language and Literacy, the Cobb Dyslexia Network, the Reading League of Georgia, and the International Dyslexia Association Georgia branch. So thank you all for coming out, and I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Justin, and the panelists. Thank you.
Hey, good evening, everybody. I don't know about you, but I feel like I need to take a deep breath because every time those stats hit the screen, I was like, out of breath. So everyone take a deep breath with me. But I am thrilled to be here. My name is Justin Browning. I'm the K-3 Field Implementation Coordinator at the Rollins Center for Language and Literacy. We've been deeply rooted in this work with Marietta City Schools and other schools across our state and really across the nation doing this work. And so it's an honor to be here tonight with our panel. Really as we think about the intersection of literacy, justice, and equity. So I'm going to take just a moment to introduce our panelists, and then we're going to dig in. First, we have Eugene Choi. Eugene is a senior staff attorney on the Children's Rights Team at the Southern Poverty Law Center. The Southern Poverty Law Center is a catalyst for racial justice in the South and beyond, working in partnership with communities to dismantle white supremacy, strengthen intersectional movements, and advance the human rights of all people. As a product of the Columbia County, Georgia public school system, Eugene has been advocating for children's rights for a decade. Through litigation and advocacy, Eugene has represented many children with dyslexia across Georgia to ensure their access to appropriate curriculum, services, and supports. Let's welcome Eugene. Next up is Tina Engberg. Tina is the state leader for Decoding Dyslexia Georgia, a grassroots parent-led advocacy for dyslexia. She participated in the creation of Georgia's Dyslexia Handbook in 2019 and successfully led an effort to have the Georgia legislature fund SB 48. Her team of incredible, dedicated parents across the state created relationships with the State Board of Education in order to bring awareness to dyslexia and related reading instruction issues. Tina currently serves on the State Dyslexia Task Force and is spearheading a parent-focused dyslexia handbook. A native of Atlanta, she graduated with a BA from Bates College and will begin a master's in reading at Mount St. Joseph University in August. Let's welcome Tina. Okay, up next is Catherine Pozniak. Catherine is a native of Cobb County and a graduate of Sprayberry High School. She has served as an assistant state superintendent in Louisiana, overseeing an education budget of $5.5 billion. She continues to work with districts and states across the country on local, state, and federal education policies. Let's welcome Catherine. Finally are my people, the teachers, right? So Khadijah Williams is a doctoral candidate and teacher in Atlanta Public Schools and currently teaches second grade as an EIP teacher at Hope Hill Elementary. She received training in structured literacy through the REAP program, Reading is Essential for All People. And finally, my friend Allison. Allison is a first grade teacher at Marietta City Schools with 20 years of classroom experience. She is currently serving as the Teacher of the Year at A.L. Veris Elementary and is a Science of Reading enthusiast. Okay, so let's dig into the questions. First, we're going to go to Eugene. Can you talk about how the Southern Poverty Law Center views the right to read from a legal and civil rights perspective?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Justin. So the ability to read is a basic human right. It's a critical component to social justice, and at the Southern Poverty Law Center, we strive to make sure that all human rights are accessible to everyone, and as well as dismantling institutional racism. We represent families and students particularly students with specific learning disabilities like dyslexia. And I can say, on the ground and representing these courageous families, the issues that you saw in the film are very much real. I mean, probably most of you all know that. And unfortunately, the statistics that you read about in some of the other states are very similar to Georgia's statistics. A third of all fourth graders can't read beyond a basic reading level, and students of color make up nearly half of those who are unable to read past the basic reading level. So at SPLC, we consider this a human right. We are willing to advocate and fight to uphold these rights, and we're really excited for the opportunity to be part of this movement and do what we can to help.
Awesome, thank you, Eugene. So one of the things that hit me in the film was, of course, when it says that literacy is the greatest civil right, but when he talked about in the Stone Age, they needed a stone, right? In the Bronze Age, they needed bronze. In the Information Age, they needed information. And I think, I don't know about anyone else, but like that hit me pretty hard, that so many of our students don't have access right now to the information that they need. And so now the next question is going to go to Tina, because we're making waves here in Georgia, really thinking about legislation that's passing and how we're ensuring that this access is for everybody. So thanks to advocates like Decoding Dyslexia and many others, SB 48 was signed into law in 2019. And is set to screen students for characteristics of dyslexia in the 2024-2025 school year. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and then about the passage of HB 538 and SB 211?
Sure. So, yes, SB 48 is what we refer to as Georgia's first dyslexia law. And so apologies if you're not catching the numbers, because they've been codified and signed into law, but they don't have fancy names. Like, they just don't have fancy names. SB 48 is the dyslexia law, and when it got signed into law, what it did was establish a pilot program for screening for characteristics of dyslexia, and 7 districts across the state decided to participate in the pilot. They're finishing up the pilot right now. When school ends, they will start compiling their final reports. Marietta City Schools is one of the districts that's participating in the pilot. And I like to think that the work that they started with the dyslexia pilot and not really understanding what they'd gotten into made them realize, oh, well, we've got bigger things that we need to take care of regarding literacy in general. And that has been kind of the sentiment that the 7 districts that have participated in the pilot have come forth with. They do annual report backs, and so this summer will be the last of those report backs, and then there'll be a quiet period where districts across the state are supposed to be creating plans, kind of using those pilot districts as a roadmap. Then, surprisingly, this legislative session, 2 bills got passed that have significant impact because they address general literacy issues. House Bill 538 is called the Georgia Early Literacy Act, super sexy. It provides teacher training in structured literacy, evidence-based, and the evidence base, aka the science of reading. And it also calls for schools to use high-quality instructional materials to help build knowledge for students, because that's a real catalyst when you're talking about reading comprehension. Some of the things that they showed in the film were having discussions with particular Ivy and Fred about language that they will eventually use. Ivy's not able to read the word strawberry as a 2-year-old, but she's learning it and she's saying it and she's practicing and she's getting really good at understanding what the word strawberry means, so that when she gets to that point in her reading instruction, she knows, she can comprehend when she decodes strawberry, she can get it, and it's like, oh, I love strawberries. That's the magic that happens when you start to decode and understand the language, that oral language piece is so critical. And then SB 211 establishes the Georgia Council on Literacy, which will be a 4-year council that will take into account some of the aspects of how we navigate this issue as a state and make systematic changes and push all the levers, like our university system kind of acts in a silo, our Professional Standards Commission acts in a silo, and the idea is that this commission will help bridge those different groups that need to be talking with one another and working with one another to help solve this problem.
Awesome. So I know in the movie, Kareem was talking about the through line in schools, and the through line was basically the kids can't read, right? And that was a common through line that he had discovered. I think we have a through line with 2 of the teachers here that we've learned that with the right instruction, that students can read. And so, Khadijah, this first question is for you, and I just want to say teachers matter. Y'all are on the front line, and we know that teachers must be well equipped, right, in order to change literacy outcomes in our schools. And it's not enough just to have a toolbox full of tools, because we've done that for years, right? Let's give teachers a tool, give them another tool, give them another tool. But instead, really what we need to do is we need to make sure that teachers have the right tools and that they're effective and efficient. And so I want to ask you if you would tell us just a little bit about how you've been equipped to do this work, and then what you attribute your student data to.
So I am fortunate enough to have been trained through my master's program, through phonics instruction, also through REAP, working together with REAP, especially Ms. Elizabeth, to develop a developmentally appropriate way of teaching children. So we work on syllable types, affixes. So we're teaching kids to like break down words. Like if you see the word turtle, you might know the word turtle, but like why does turtle say turtle? Oh, because it has falsy R. Oh, I see consonant LE. So it's honestly really powerful to see students being able to break these words down and then use them in their writing.
And now, as a teacher, Allison, you've been on the journey now with Marietta City Schools for about 2 years of building knowledge and taking action. And we know that knowledge is power, but it's only powerful if we take action on it. So tell us a little bit more about how your knowledge has led to action in the classroom, and then what you attribute your student data to.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you all for spending your Monday night like living in the land of literacy. I think it's really awesome that so many of you are here. Our knowledge journey through the science of reading started with Grant really kind of leaning in with the dyslexia study and Rollins School and Cox campus and saying like, okay, what do we need to do because we know that reading is a problem? And then my gorgeous, wonderful, heartfelt principal has a motto that says, if you know better, do better. And it gave us space to learn better. So we started with phonics because phonics and that phonemic awareness is a huge piece of what we were doing, and we leaned into teaching students the phonics rules. We leaned into kids having word lists and text and decodables, and every day they are reading and they are writing because we know that decoding leads to encoding. And those 2 components are what our students needed. And so we really started kind of like a blank slate and let our students do the work. And it really became a student-centered classroom where our knowledge then put into application. So the growth that students have shown in the data is phenomenal. We have students that are communicating and collaborating in ways that show knowledge but also show skill. And those are the things that are going to teach them in the future, where in 2019, when only 50% of my kids were reading on grade level, I have, through this training and through what we've implemented, it's been systematic and explicit. It has changed the classroom where students are reading above grade level. 67% of my students are reading at or above a 75th percentile in Lexile level because of the work. Because of leaning into the systematic and explicit science of reading, it's showing improvement in the classroom. And so numbers don't lie, and these numbers don't lie. when you're looking at students who are reading with fluency and reading with comprehension and in a first grade classroom talking about the function of the parts of a plant and what plants require and using those vocabulary terms and asking you to analyze their answer to a question, it's because of the work that we put in that focuses on those 5 pillars that allows them to walk out of our classrooms being readers. And it is through this work, and it is changing the lives of teachers, but it is changing the lives of students.
Allison, I know, so I have the privilege of walking by Allison's classroom several times a month, and she always pulls me in and she's like, look at this, you won't believe it. And so I think the fun part about this work is that it does show the data changes and changes quickly. I love that you named that it's not just phonics though, right? And I think there's sometimes in the conversation about changing literacy that it's all phonics, right? It's that oral language, it's making sure that that vocabulary is being built, that the language comprehension is being strengthened, all of that. Will you tell us just about the oral reading fluency and what happened just in a short amount of time in your classroom?
Absolutely, and this is what you talk about how things change so quickly when you are explicit and with the routine. So in January, we did oral reading fluency, which is students reading accurately the words on a page, and we know it's one of the highest links to comprehension for students. And my students were reading at about class average about 45 words per minute, and we were like, I know that there's better. I know that there's growth to happen here. So we got together as a team and we created sort of a systematic routine where every single day students were working on repeated readings, they were reading their passages, and we just leaned in and we did it every day for 4 weeks, and 4 weeks later I reassessed my students and our class average was 65 words per minute. So in 4 straight weeks we were able to move the needle 20 words per minute, which is huge. It's already in the middle of the year, they're exceeding the end of the year expectation for students. Again, because it's systematic, because it's explicit, we taught them what to do, we taught them how to do it, and now they're doing it, and they're doing better than expected.
Awesome. Kareem in the video said, if we're not tackling literacy, then we're wasting time. And so I just want to take a minute to applaud all the teachers who are not wasting time and who are tackling literacy. Okay, and Catherine, this last question is for you. So thinking through the lens of local control, that's how Georgia's Constitution lays out how our 181 school districts make decisions locally to deal with education issues. How do changes being made in reading instruction here in Georgia compare to some states with similar structures around the nation?
So the first thing I want to say is, even though I sit up here as someone who works in education finance, I actually am a little bit of an anomaly in the education finance world, in that I was actually a classroom teacher. I use Lucy Hawkins' writing workshop in my classroom. My classroom had a level reading library from Honest and Pinnell, and there's not a day that I don't do this work and hold regret about what that meant for my kids, because they sat on the wrong side of those stats that we saw today. So, I'm coming at the other end of this, where we just, heard from what this looks like at the classroom level, and I just want to take a moment to sort of paint what this systems changes and what you should be seeing then from your school board and from your district leadership in terms of this these changes that are coming through on these bills. So first I would say Georgia is on trend. As you saw, we're finally going to get them on that map colored in. They're going to join over 24 states in the country that have taken on some sort of literacy legislation. Those are coming from red states, they're coming from blue states. This is not, this isn't following along sort of political party lines. But this is a pretty big shift, and there are kind of 2 things I want to point out about this. So everyone's here, probably most people have heard of No Child Left Behind, came through the Bush administration. And that was sort of the era of accountability. So what it said is, we expect kids to perform at this at the end of 3rd grade. We expect this many kids to graduate at the end of high school. We're going to implement statewide testing, and if you don't meet those benchmarks, there will be consequences. Then we moved on to the sort of second phase of that with the Every Student Succeeds Act under the Obama administration about 2015. Same idea, except they said, well, and if you don't make those sort of end goals that we laid out, the consequences are going to be that we're going to give you extra funding and extra support to sort of help you meet those goals. What makes the legislation that we see here in Georgia about literacy different than what we are typically used to in the accountability world is that they're not just defining outputs of, by third grade kids should be on reading level. They're actually getting pretty specific about the inputs and the quality of those inputs. So they're not just saying, get kids to read on grade level by the end of third grade. We'll check back with you in 4 years when those kids first hit the Georgia milestones at the end of third grade. They're saying, actually, this is what needs to happen in teacher training. This is the quality of curriculum that needs to be in the classroom. And actually, we're not just gonna wait for milestones in 4 years. We're going to say that every kid is gonna be screened and there are going to be regular diagnostics and reports on those diagnostics so that we're catching reading problems early. That is a massive paradigm shift. It's not just happening in literacy, but it's particularly important in literacy because those foundational years, the most critical years of literacy are untested grades. They're K through 2. And it's been a black box. And we've just sort of like taken the bet that everyone knows how to get there. And so this is now sort of saying, here's the path. That then needs to play out at the school board level. And, kudos to Marietta City Schools who did this a couple of months ago, is you need to have a school board that's making a shift from not just having a meeting once a year on what their milestone results were, but to say, actually, our goals are going to be around, our strategic plan is going to be around inputs. What is the percentage of teachers that's going to receive high quality instruction this year and professional development? How many classrooms are going to have high quality instructional materials? So that's the big shift. I would also say for school boards, this trend was starting pre-pandemic, but it's certainly been accelerated by the pandemic because of the billions of dollars of COVID relief money that have come in. I am the first to say, as an education finance person, money does not solve our problems in education, but it certainly has mitigated the barriers in that districts have had money to pay for stuff and to pay for new curriculum, to pay for teachers to get retrained, et cetera. That's also come though with some issues, and let me give you an example of this. I was watching a school board meeting last year. It was an update on literacy being given to the school board members. And they showed on this slide the sort of 3 programs and supports teachers were going to get in this next upcoming school year. And one of them was letters training because the state was providing grants, which is based on the science of reading. The state had provided a grant for that training. And the other 2 programs were programs that had been longstanding in the district that were balanced literacy programs. And what was clearly lost on the district staff and the school board members is that those things were in conflict with each other, right? You remember in the film where it was like, some of these approaches are top down and some of these approaches are bottom up. When you do both of them together, kids get crushed, right? And so in this world where we've had an abundance of money and we can just do more things without having to say, and we're stopping these things, right? That's created a problem. So not only does your school board, one, this is not a detail too small. Your reading instruction program, should be a topic at school board meetings. But as much as they are saying this is the thing we are now doing because the law tells us to, they also should be doing an audit of every single program and every single budget in that school to make sure, right? But level reading books are the way. When I did this at the state, the last anecdote I'll have here is at the state when we were implementing this in Louisiana without legislation, we basically just said we're not going to give you any more money unless you're using high quality instruction materials. Here's the first step we did to getting that work done. We had networks, regional staff that would go out into the field and classrooms. The first step that they did was go in schools and classrooms in the spring and make sure that all low quality instruction materials were thrown away in the garbage. And I'm not talking figuratively, I mean literally our regional staff were texting us pictures at the state of instruction materials going into black bags into the dumpster. And so that is really thorough work that needs to be done on both ends of not just trying to meet the new compliance requirement, but to make sure a balanced budget is the floor, right? what your school boards and your school leadership and your district leadership needs to make sure is that your budget is strategic, and that means comprehensive and coherent, and all focused singularly on this programming. You cannot hold those two things at once.
Thank you for sharing that. The idea of the bottom-up, top-down crushing students, that hit me. I haven't heard that before, and so I really appreciate that. One of the things that came to mind for me was I've heard that you have to pull the weeds so the flowers can grow, right? And I think that's hard to let go of those practices and those programs that schools have held sacred to for so long. But I think there's definitely, that's the starting place, so thank you for naming that. Well, that wraps up our questions. So I want to thank the panel. At Cox Campus, we say all the time that our mission is literacy and justice for all. And that is a mission that we're just deeply invested in. Because I really believe that the video we watched tonight is the beginning of America's dirtiest secret being revealed. That the majority of our kids in America can't read. And so literacy and justice for all takes all of us fighting for students and making sure that every student has the right to read. And so I hope that everyone in the audience tonight, that you're compelled to lead from where you are, to make sure that every child has a voice, and then that they're able to lead a life of self-determination, because that is really the end goal for us. So thank you all for being here tonight. Continue to stay connected and engaged, and we will see y'all soon. Thanks.
Oh, and there are QR codes on some of the tables, and I put a couple of QR codes by the doors as you leave. Scan those. That'll pull you up to a page I created yesterday on our Decoding Dyslexia website with resources that are freely available for you, family members, friends, neighbors, to take advantage of as you're working through these issues.
Okay.